Hey guys, Molton here and welcome back to the series. Today we're looking at my first ever chess win against a title player, which was way back in the 2004 Dobel Cup. Back then, even though I played a lot of online chess, there weren't so many opportunities to play over the board, and this was one of the biggest tournaments in Australia. So this game was a Scandinavian from the black side against women's international master Petra Blaskova, and it shows you just not to value the bishop pair too much and exactly what to do in these sort of pawn structures when your opponent is chasing your bishop around. So hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you very soon. So at this point in time, even though I was nearing the 2000 mark, you can see that Scandinavian played a big part of my repertoire. I was also playing a lot of French back then as well, even though later on I would switch from the French because those positions really didn't suit me at all. But here we have a mainline Scandinavian after Queen a5, d4, Knight f6, Bishop c4, and Black plays c6, which is just to leave some retreat squares for the Queen on c7 or d8. Queen goes to e2, Bishop comes out normally to f5 or g4, before we close up the pawn chain with the move pawn to e6 here. My opponent played Bishop to d2, and here I played the move Bishop to b4, just developing a piece and also removing any possible discoveries. The downside of Bishop b4, as we'll see, is that once my opponent chases the bishop, I will have to eventually give it up. So after castles, Knight d7, my opponent, she played a3, and here I decided to give up the bishop because there's no point wasting time bringing the bishop back, because then there's some discovery with Knight d5 which will hit the queen. So instead we just capture on c3, bishop captures, and then drop the queen back to c7. So in this particular case here, we see that white does have the bishop pair, but only if she can use the bishops long term will they be effective. At the moment the bishops are sort of stuck, they don't really have any squares to go to, and I can use this to my advantage. She played the move pawn to d5 to try and open up the bishop pair, but as we'll see, pawn to d5 still limits them, especially the light squared bishop, and I also have a very solid structure here from the black side, so I don't think it's the best idea to play the move d5 right away, since after captures, not only do I get open c-file for any potential attacks now, but the bishop on d5 is still sort of stuck. The bishop on c3 also can become a target later on. So here we play the move rook to c8. So this idea is just to put pressure on the bishop. Maybe we're threatening to play knight to e4 next. Knight d4. Of course, we should try to preserve the bishop, but first we play the move knight to e4, just threatening the bishop here on c3. The bishop moves back, a good move, and then after bishop to g6, white played f3, knight comes back to f6, g4, and then black played the move knight to b6. So the idea here is that we're getting ready for the move pawn to h4. So whenever you play positions like the Caro-Kann or the Scandinavian, you will develop this bishop outside the pawn chain, but you'll find that it can get harassed by the kingside pawns especially, so you need to keep a close eye on it. And here as black, we need to create some counterplay on the other side of the board before white can get in the move pawn to h4, and that's what we're aiming to do here. So we have threats already of e5 perhaps along the lines of attacking the c2 square here with several pieces, the bishop as well as the rook. Therefore white played bishop to g3, queen c5, rook d2. So rook d2 again is a very precautionary move. I think maybe h4 there might have been another option as well. Knight to d5 was played, and now my opponent played the move h4, but I feel that it's just a tad too slow, and we can see that the counterplay on the queen side is very, very strong. So here black has a very, very nice move, which you can try to spot here. And that's the move knight to c3, and even though the knight's being attacked by the pawn on b2, it actually can't be captured, because if white captures it, then black has a nice response. Queen takes a3, And in order to defend the bishop on b2, on a2, then the king has to go across, and then black has to move knight to a4, threatening not only knight takes c3, but also queen to b2 is checkmate. So this would not be a good scenario for white. And of course he can't sacrifice the bishop, because then there's just checkmating threats all over the place on the queen side. Therefore, she decided to play the move queen to e5 instead. But after queen e5, of course, we just capture the bishop. And then after the move king b1, actually, it's quite funny here because we can even bring the knight back by playing the move knight to c3. And again, the knight can't really be touched, because if the knight gets captured, then there's all sorts of threats. Like queen takes c3, queen takes a3, knight c4 ideas also coming. So the king moves across, and then we just play the move knight back to d5 with the threat of knight c4. So we have a free piece here, and from here on we can convert fairly comfortably. We just need to make sure that our bishop is safe there. And the rest is fairly comfortable for black. So here white doesn't have the idea of rook takes d5, because rook takes c2 is threatening the pawn, as well as knight c3 check. So bishop e5, and just make sure that you don't give too many chances here, but we're a clean piece up, so we should be winning very comfortably. So bishop takes c2, removing the defender, followed by knight takes b3, queen b4, and here we finish the game off with the move knight to d4 check. I think this game is important to me at the time, since not only it was my first ever master win, but also it sort of taught me not to overvalue the bishop pair too much, because even back then I held the bishop pair really highly in regard, and it was games like this and even later ones where I even lost with the bishop pair, which I started to learn that it wasn't always the case that the bishops are always effective, and the knights are also very good depending on the pawn structure. And you really need to judge each position on its own merit and not just generalize as a whole. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this short video on the Scandinavian. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one in the series. Take care.